morning, everyone. My name is Felienne Hermans. I'm a full professor here at VU in two faculties, both in the faculty of Beta in computer science, but also in FGB at the Leraren Academy, where we teach high school teachers. And I'm also a teacher. So I'm not just a professor, I'm also a teacher in a high school. In Dutch, you can make this funny joke where I can say, I'm not just een hoogleraar, I'm also a normal leraar. That just doesn't really work in English. But I'm a professor and I also teach high school. So I teach 12-year-olds every week. But this is a profession that is maybe a little bit at risk. I mean, do we still need teachers today, right? Because people are saying the simple fact is that teachers are out of date. Who knows who said this? Any guesses? Steve Jobs? Elon Musk? No, it's none of these people. It is actually B.F. Skinner. So now some people with some knowledge of psychology might also guess when this quote was said. Any guesses for what year this is from, this quote? Yeah, almost 54. So none of this is new, right? And B.F. Skinner, people might know B.F. Skinner from the Skinner box. And he created these devices where he could train pigeons and other animals that if they would press a button, then you would get a rice or a grain, and then the pigeons would be happy and they would press the button and they would get many grains and then they were really happy. So teaching machines are not something that is new. They're actually really, really old. Here are some examples actually from devices that B.F. Skinner created. These are music teaching machines. So the first one on the left is a girl that's learning rhythm. She has to press with a drum in the right rhythm. And the second one is actually a machine that teaches a piano. And you see a Skinner box actually literally on top of this keyboard. If the kid presses the right key on the keyboard, then a coin or a chocolate will be dispensed from that box. So this is really Skinner box way of teaching machines. And this is again the 50s. And still music teachers exist today, right? There's a reason why our kids aren't learning this way. So let's actually look at this. This something is going to radicalize the school system is something we have heard quite some times before. It isn't just, AI or algorithms. This actually happened a long time ago. Radio was going to radically change the school system in the 1920s because, well, we can replace a teacher by a radio and then just all the knowledge will be dispensed worldwide to all the kids everywhere. TV was going to change the education system. Video, right? Oh, but now the best teachers of the world will record videos and we just simply mail the VHSs to the schools and then the kids can learn from the best. The CD is going to revolutionize the school system, or the internet, right? Or MOOCs. This is already in the time when I was a professor. Yes, the best professors are going to make videos on YouTube and those will be used everywhere. And then now the newest trend is generative AI. This history of impact in the school system of technology is actually quite long, right? There's just this long list of things that was going to revolutionize the school system. So I'm skeptical, right? I'm like, really? Is this really going to make an impact? And then people that love technology are like, no, Felienne, you are wrong. This is really different because this time it is personalized, right? Radio and TV broadcasts to everyone, but this system is personalized. It's like, yes, personalized. This is interesting that you say this, that you use this as an argument, because we had B.F. Skinner in the 50s, but there was even a person before that, Sidney Pressey, in the 20s, that was even earlier working on getting teaching machines into schools. And he also said that his system was personalized. Unlike mass media, Sidney Pressey said, my system is individualized. And this is, in 1926. And this mass media that he is referring to here is radio. So even this idea that education can be personalized with technology is something that's almost 100 years old. And here I have, this is Trouw, a Dutch newspaper, this is in Dutch, from 1964, where this personalization again also is mentioned in the second wave, the B.F. Skinner wave. Here we see, this is Dutch, aan het geprogrammeerde leren zijn volgens Dr. Brunt van de Leidse Universiteit vele voordelen verbonden. Elke leerling kan studeren in het tempo dat hem het beste ligt. So every student can learn at their own pace, right? And this is a long, long time ago. So any guesses? I dove into Delphi, like this wealth of Dutch newspapers that we all have access to. It's so very cool. Do you want to guess what the first mention is of a teaching machine in the Dutch press? What year was a teaching machine first mentioned? 1960? It's actually 1899. I have here the Rotterdamse Nieuwsblad, January 23, 1899. They're talking about een automatic cycle teaching machine. Een toestel voor het onderricht in het wielrijden dat werkelijk praktisch lijkt. So this is a machine that can teach you how to ride a bike. So that you don't fall over because the machine will keep you stable and then you can learn how to ride a bike from a machine. So 125 years ago already, people were fantasizing about teaching with machines. And yet we do not teach children to ride a bike with a machine, right? So none of this is actually very new. And then people that love technology go like, yes, you, Felienne, and other teachers, you are so conservative. It's impossible to get technology into schools. It's like, yeah, you know who also said that? Sidney Pressey. Schools don't want automation because they are too conservative. And this seems like a reasonable argument, right? And maybe up to 2018 or 19, I would have also agreed that schools are conservative and they resist technology, partly also just because they resist technology. But then we had the pandemic, right? The pandemic happened. And in the school where I teach, there are a few of my colleagues that never use computers ever, right? They hate computers. They don't do grading in an Excel sheet. They do everything on paper. Even those teachers, within 2 days after the lockdown, were teaching on Zoom. So it was possible for them to embrace technology. They could do it. They weren't too conservative for this. When there is an absolute need, the pandemic has shown us that education can actually adopt technology within a few days. But then the difference was, it was very, very clear that it was necessary. And I think a lot of the other situations, it wasn't so clear to teachers that it was necessary. So just saying teachers will reject technology always because they're conservative doesn't actually align with 2 years of online teaching that everyone did. We didn't love it, but people did it and they weren't rejecting it. And then the argument that people from the technology space make is that a lack of change is bad, right? This is an argument we hear from people that want to sell technology to schools. They say, look at a classroom from the 1920s and look at a classroom today. It is the exact same thing. This is a problem. It is a problem that nothing has changed. Look, they are so conservative. But maybe this is just a good way to do things, right? Like my pens have 2 pen legs, not 3. 2, and they have had 2 legs for a long, long time because this is just a convenient shape around your legs. Maybe this is a convenient shape for teaching. Just saying something hasn't changed in decades, maybe that can also be a sign that some parts of this actually is quite good. So now, of course, people that love technology say, no, this is different. This technology is really different, Felienne, because generative AI can think. It is not like a radio or a video. It is a technology that is inherently different from everything we had before. And this is an argument that really requires a lot of unpacking and requires a deep dive into what generative AI is. It's not so easy to say, well, I don't think it is so different, because it is, of course, in many ways different from the technologies we have seen before. So what is generative AI? AI is artificial intelligence, and generative means that it generates something. And in this, it's actually quite different from other forms of AI, like Deep Blue, the chess machine we had in the 90s, was also artificial intelligence, but it wasn't generating content. It was just saying, the rook to b6. So how does generative AI work? If I ask you, audience, to complete this sentence, if I say the big bad, you all say wolf. Thank you for participating. So if you understand that this is possible, if you understand it's possible to have half a sentence and then to have some agreement among each other about what the next word in this sentence is, if you understand this basic principle, you have understood the basic form of how GPT works, because it is also just a next word machine based on consensus. So this is really, you can go back to your email, you can go back to sleep, whatever you want, go for a coffee. The basic thing you have now understood. And internally, how this works is there's something inside the algorithm. You can visualize this like a spreadsheet if you want to, that says, okay, the big bad, well, if it's wolf, this 80% chance that that word is the next one. But we can also have the big bad boss. Some people might not have an agreeable manager. This is the big bad boss. Maybe if you're playing a video game, you have a big bad enemy like this super Bowser with shields and fire. This is a big bad enemy. But those things are less likely to actually occur. They're possible, but not so likely. So rather than calling these things a large language model, an LLM, as many people do, I actually prefer to talk about a language continuation model, or in Dutch, een taalvoorspel model. I think this is more precisely saying what it is and what it does, because a large language model leaves open the interpretation that this model understands language or produces language in the way that we produce language. But we people, of course, we do not follow a prediction algorithm because we can say very weird things. We are free to do that. So internally, it has this like Excel sheet in which it takes a few words and then predicts based on statistics what the next word is. And then you can wonder, how does it get this table? Basically, it gets this table from, if you say it in a positive way, reading the internet. In a slightly less positive way, you can say from stealing from the internet, because some of the materials that it is reading are maybe even copyrighted. We don't exactly know. So it's reading the internet, and internally it has this table, and each time text is encountered, the probability updated. So if we have this table, but now we see, oh, there's here, we see the big bad wolf. Now we have to update our prediction. We say, oh, now it's getting a little bit more likely that it's actually a wolf. So this will be updated. This goes a little bit up and that goes a little bit down. And then by reading and reading and reading, this model will be refined until perfectly it can predict after a sentence what is the next word. So that is artificial intelligence as we have the meaning now in 2024. But when I was a student 20 years ago and I had very cool pink hair instead of boring gray streaked hair, AI meant something really, really different. I already mentioned Deep Blue, the chess computer. So a while ago, 20 years ago, AI meant symbolic AI. And symbolic AI basically means calculating with words, calculating with facts. So a symbolic AI system, you can feed it facts like a duck is a bird and all birds can fly. Therefore, from those two facts, I can conclude that a duck can also fly. So it's really interesting to go through a paradigm shift where AI used to be only just 20 years ago, something that always would guarantee a correct outcome, right? And researchers in those days were really worried about, can we guarantee that it doesn't make a mistake? Really saying like, but what if it makes a mistake? We're going to put this into planes. We're going to put this into medical devices. It should be of the utmost concern that these models do not make mistakes. That is the artificial intelligence that we have. And then we look at artificial intelligence today. So here it says, well, there's a little bit of an overlay, but what I'm asking ChatGPT here is, how often does the letter A occur in the word ginger? How often does the letter A occur in the word ginger, audience? 0, yes. ChatGPT does not agree. It says the letter A occurs in the word ginger twice. Here again, you see that it's a language prediction model. It cannot think. It just takes from the internet sentences that look like how many times does something occur in something, and then it gives a prediction. And I say, I don't think this is correct. It says, I apologize for my mistake. You are correct. I made an error. The letter A only occurs once in ginger. Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. If you have more questions, feel free to ask. I do have more questions, yes. My question is actually, could it be that you are still wrong? Is it possible, right? I am now starting to doubt myself. Could it be that you are wrong? I apologize for my confusion. Now it goes full mansplaining mode. Let's count the occurrences of the word A in the word ginger again, like I am the idiot. Here, it spells the word for me, ginger, and then it says there's only one A in the word ginger. If you believe there might be a different count, let me know. I'm happy to assist you further. Thank you. Yes, I do believe there might be a different count. So I'm saying maybe I'm wrong, right? Could be. I make mistakes. If there is an A, can you point the A out to me? I apologize for my confusion. The word ginger does not contain the letter A. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. I appreciate your patience. So it is really massively confusing that what used to be AI just a few years ago, where people were very concerned with it being wrong, and today we have this, and both of these things are AI, right? This is almost a category error if you're a philosopher. This is not the same thing. And the problem is that a lot of our thinking about algorithms is based on the old model of AI. And it is also based on calculators or spreadsheets, right? If we calculate something in a spreadsheet, you're not going to check the answer. You can trust that the computer is right. You're not verifying that your calculator doesn't have a bug in it. So we're very much trained in thinking computers are correct and they know what they say, they actually know that it's correct, but that is no longer true. And this paradigm shift will really require us to look at computers in a very, very different way, because we cannot trust anything that comes out of these systems. So yes, it is artificial because people created it, so that's easy, but is this actually intelligence? That's a question that we can ponder. But this has been done, of course. There's lots of philosophers have already thought about what does thinking mean? And it's really sometimes confusing/frustrating to me that leaders in our field, technology programmers, like George Hinton, for example, from Google, or formerly from Google, has said just last week, he says, those models have intuition. I'm like, friend, what is intuition, right? Give me a definition for what this means. And then there's not a definition, and it's not even so easy to define, to pinpoint. What does it mean to have intuition? So you cannot just say, oh, this is intelligence, because that requires you to actually define what is intelligence. So a language continuation model, I think, can continue language. It cannot do any things. But the problem is it can continue language surprisingly well. Sometimes you're really tricked into thinking you're chatting with a human. And that's not just a coincidence, of course. It is phrased like, sorry, I made a mistake. Let me know if I can help you further, right? So it's phrased in a way that you start to think you're chatting with someone. And you see this also, that if I'm chatting with it, I say, could you still be wrong? Even though I know it's an algorithm, I'm tempted to speak to it like it is a person. Could you still be wrong? And that's not just my personal bias. This phrasing of the sentences where it puts this in the first person tempts me into thinking that. But it doesn't think, it just has this prediction model. And it cannot really reason, or at least it cannot reason reliably. Sometimes it is correct, and they're like, ha, what? How does it know this? Here, for example, I also asked it, how many E's are in my name, Felienne? And then I think, it will be wrong because nowhere on the internet is content that tells you how many E's there are in my name, right? And then it says 3. I'm like, what? It has advanced. Now it is smart, but this is just a coincidence, right? A clock that doesn't move is also correct twice a day. This is just a random guess. And if you have sentences with many letter occurrences, like 50, then it will never be correct, because the answer to such puzzles is never very, very high. It's always 1, 2, 3, 4, or maybe 10. So you can play with it. And as soon as you know it's a language prediction model, it actually gets really, really easy to find mistakes, because you know that this is something it will be bad at. So it cannot think. And as I said, people have thought about that deeply. One argument that people make against machines can think is called the Chinese room argument. And in the Chinese room argument, the assumption is two people that do not speak Chinese. So it's sort of a Western metaphor. One person, me in this case, is outside of the Chinese room, and one person is inside the Chinese room. And we only communicate with each other with letters. We only send each other letters, or maybe today this could be email. And this person in the room is locked with the printed out entire history of ChatGPT. It is a very, very big room. Many hypothetical trees are destroyed for this experiment. And then I can communicate with this person. So I say something like the big bad in Chinese. And then this person that doesn't know Chinese is going to look into all the prediction models of GPT. And it says, aha, here is the Chinese character for Wu. This is answer. But this person is not Chinese, has only access to this printed out version of GPT. And then you can ask yourself, does this person think in Chinese? Does this person know Chinese? And most people would agree that this person does not understand Chinese. Look at the characters and saying, well, this character, oh, yeah, this is the next one. This person doesn't know what he's actually answering, just following an algorithm. If you agree that this person in the Chinese room doesn't think Chinese, then if you were to replace this person by a robot, sort of by construction, the robot also would not be able to think. So this is one argument that people use, basically that can be summarized as simply answering questions with words isn't the only thing that is thinking. And there's another argument, and this is the marathon argument. So who in the audience has ever marathon? Or a half marathon then maybe. Okay, a few more people. Okay, why? Like, why would you run a marathon? This doesn't make sense because buses exist and cars and bikes, right? Why would you run a marathon? It's not a very efficient way to transport yourself 42 kilometers. Yet Sunday in Rotterdam, 20,000 people again at least started the marathon. So this is something that has meaning. And robots and cars and fat bikes are not allowed in the marathon, right? I would be very annoyed if robots would participate in the marathon because I'm starting and the robot is already at the finish drinking motor oil or something that a robot does when it has finished the marathon. I don't want that, right? I don't want technology in this space for humans because the marathon is not about doing 42 kilometers. You can take a bike and this will be quicker and less painful. But the whole goal of the marathon is doing the thing. And I'm also trying to use this argument, trying and failing, I must say, to use this argument on my students. I say, students, the essay that you have to hand in, that is not the goal. That's not why you're here. You're not here to give me deliverables because this is actually what you're here for, right? You are here to have the pain, to struggle, to do the heavy thinking that in the end results in the essay, just like doing a marathon results in having a medal, but that's not why you do the marathon, right? But then students find this hard because they're like, yes, teacher, but we're so sad in the middle, we're so stressed and we're so frustrated and we think you're almost there, but then you give us so much feedback and then we have to do more. And then it is so tempting. It is so tempting to use the algorithm. But then the only thing I can say is, if you run a marathon, it is so tempting at 30K to sit down and cry and stop going forward. But it is worth it to continue, right? Because what makes us human is struggle. This is why we don't have robots in the marathon, because the whole thing is it will make you stronger and it will help you learn about you and about life. That is the thing that matters in doing the work. So the fact that machines exist that can execute a task like transportation or writing an essay, it doesn't have something to do with me as a human. I don't care if a machine can do it. I like doing the work, or at least I like being done with the work. That is enjoyable. But even though machines cannot think, that doesn't mean they can be dangerous, right? I'm not so worried about machines. The robots are coming, they're going to take over. But I am worried about the impact that technology will have on us all. Here's one example. So I created a programming language, actually called the Heady programming language. This is a language for education that I use in my school, and also a lot of schools now use it worldwide. If you ask GPT what the Heady programming language is, then it tells you that this is a programming language created by a guy called Chris Pressey. esoteric programming language. It's made for artistic expression. Well, all these things are somewhat true, but I am not Chris Pressey, right? I am Felienne Hermans. And I'm like, are you sure Pressey created Hetty? And then it says, oh, sorry, I apologize for my incorrect information. Where have we seen this before? It is not created by Chris Pressey. It was created by Andy Matuszak and Michael Nielsen. And it is a programming language, etc., right? And this is an example of bias in these algorithms, because there are hardly any programming languages that are created by women. Out of the top 20 most used programming language currently, only one is partly created by a female programmer. So the likelihood that a programming language, the sentence, this programming language is created by something, something, that there will be a female name there or a non-Western name also, is practically zero. And then you could say, yes, Felienne, you are just angry that men are taking credit for your work. Yes, that is true. Correct. But there are more issues, right? This is one example of pressing issues that lie ahead of us. There's this American sci-fi author and journalist called Cory Doctorow, and he calls the phase of the internet where we're going into, or are already into now, the upcoming enshittification of the internet. I don't know a good Dutch translation, but I think enshittification sort of covers it also in Dutch. And what Cory Doctorow is saying is what will happen is that this information inside the algorithms is going to break free, and we will no longer know what is what, right? So in the current situation, if GPT tells you that Hetty is created by people that aren't me, created the Hetty programming language. So there's a source that you can go to and verify that those are not the creators. This is also interesting that I call out Wikipedia, because when I was a student, professors would say, do not use Wikipedia because it's created by people. And now I say, definitely check things on Wikipedia because it's actually created by people. So life comes at you fast, right? But I know Wikipedia is correct because Wikipedia has this culture of forcing you to have citations. So you go to Wikipedia and you're like, oh, this is wrong. I can verify this information that's coming out of ChatGPT. This is good. However, imagine that Harry the hacker, a random guy that writes a website about programming languages, uses GPT as a source and puts this information on his website. Maybe this is a student that didn't listen to my advice and used GPT for their essay and put their essay on LinkedIn, for example. Now this information breaks free of the algorithm. We cannot see that this is created, that this was inspired by GPT. If you do a lot of rewriting, then it's not even so clear that this is where you get. Now someone is going to update my Wikipedia page saying, oh, I have found a source that wasn't GPT, and actually it was created by Michael Nielsen. And now sort of the enshittification circle is complete, where this information from GPT goes into more prominent trusted sources, and then we'll go back into the algorithms, and then we will no longer know what is actually true. And as I already pointed out, the people most likely to have their histories rewritten are the people that are less likely to have their name come out of the algorithm, which are probably women and people of color and people with non-Western names. And this cultural bias, actually, there's so many examples of this. Here's a recent paper that looked at translation algorithms. And we might be tempted to think that translation algorithms work really well. But if you translate sentences into languages with a smaller corpus that do not have so many speakers online, you get really interesting results. So here's a sentence with incidental typos, right? So they put the typos there to confuse the algorithm, because we know now it's a text prediction algorithm. So this will trip up the system because humans is not in the database because it's not a word. We people have error correction, right? We understand that this means humans, but an algorithm doesn't know this. So if you ask to translate this to, I think the language is Lithuanian, then you get this, which is already suspicious because look, here's the original sentence is in the translation. So then you think, that is weird. And this actually means it is necessary to translate this phrase from English into English into English, the source, and then it gives the source. That's the translation, right? So it looks like, if you don't know Lithuanian, then this looks like a proper sentence. And then, oh, it's a bit weird, there's some duplication in it. But it's actually not translation. Here's another one. Luxembourg has a long history, but its independence date from 1839. If you ask to translate this into Vietnamese, then this is the output. And this is immediately suspicious because of Hedi. Hedi is translated into 51 different languages. So I know a little bit about languages now. And I know that this, Chang Viet, is actually the Vietnamese word for Vietnamese. That is interesting, right? That should not be in a translation of this sentence. And what this means is this is an English sentence, so there's no way to translate it into Vietnamese, in Vietnamese. So we might be tempted in the West to think, oh, translation, automatic translation, this works really well. Because if you try it for Dutch, it actually works almost as good as tasks for English. About 80% of tasks it gets correctly. That is because Dutch has so much internet content. Even though we are a small language, we have excellent internet connectivity. So you can read the entirety of Dutch internet and learn a lot. But there's a lot of other languages that might be bigger, but that have less internet connectivity and thus less content to train on. Last year I was in Botswana. And also I was there at a dinner and I just mentioned, oh yeah, Google Translate. It's actually very easy. If I don't know something, I to look it up on Google Translate. And they were like, what? Google Translate doesn't work at all. We hate it. We never use it. And because Botswana just has 6 million speakers. And in Botswana, there's mostly internet connectivity in their capital, Gaborone. And the rest of the country doesn't really have good internet access. So there's not a lot of content. So the experience that we have with these algorithms in the West, thinking, this works perfectly, is not everyone else's experience. Yet the power to choose to use these algorithms is mainly concentrated in the Western world. So if people, even are like, let's say our university as an example, if we would say, oh, we're going to translate our content into many languages automatically so that people, the students that want to come here, they can read it in their own language. Oh, we tested it for French and German and it is epic. So we will definitely do it for all languages. Then who is benefiting from this and who is actually suffering from lower quality content because of these algorithms? That is not equally distributed. So in summary, often if people get really excited about these systems, which maybe I should point this out, right? I don't hate technology. I have a PhD in software engineering. I created a programming language. Like, I love technology, but technology has to have a goal and has to be a solution to a problem. So then people are like, yeah, Felienne, generative AI in education, isn't that awesome? I'm like, wow. Do we really want our students to learn from these biased, inaccurate systems that also, by the way, didn't go into the climate impact, but that also guzzle water? Like a bottle of water for a query isn't even outrageous and produce mass amounts of CO2. Is this really how we want to destroy the planet? Grandfather, why do we live in a cave? Well, I wanted to write an essay, but I was too lazy to do the work. So we destroyed the planet a bit more. Is this really a good strategy for us? And then there's the final dagger, right? This is the final argument that people have that want to roll these arguments, they want to roll these systems into education. They say, yes, Felienne, you are entirely right, but we have so many students. We don't have a choice. We must use algorithms because we have 600 students in the first year, so we cannot teach without the algorithms. And I think that does not sound like an AI problem to me, right? That in the situation where we have fewer students, it actually gets a lot easier to control what they use. If you have 50 students, you could say, well, you will write your essays in this room, right? So it's definitely true that it gets harder to do something if we have many students, but that shouldn't be a reason why we use technology. I think it's a really fair question why in a rich country like the Netherlands, we have so many students that we need to do our grading with an AI system. So let's look at how those systems actually impact our thinking, right? Let's look at programming education because that's what we do in our department. We have students, they're all creating programs and they submit their programs to me. And rather than grading them as a person, I actually let a robot grade the programs, which is quite common actually, even before ChatGPT. Auto grading was very common practice in programming education. But then what happens is the system can only sort of say correct or incorrect. So it says, well, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, and you are right. Or with so much more vocabulary that they can use, right? If a student doesn't submit something, if they just submit an empty program, as a person, as a teacher, I would go to the student. I would say, hey, friends, how are you? You submitted an empty assignment. Are you okay? Are you well fed? Are you happy, right? Probably the programming isn't a problem. But this is erased, this type of vocabulary, and the algorithm doesn't have this. And maybe if a student submits something that is correct, but I know that struggling last week, then maybe just saying well done isn't the right response either. Then I want to go to the student and say, wow, you did it. This is so great, right? That type of encouragement also is very hard to get from systems. Whereas if the student has submitted many correct answers and this also is correct, I say, oh, maybe aim higher. Maybe do not continue with more programming exercise. Maybe you want to read this book or do something else. Or sometimes, specifically in a high school context, as a teacher in a high school, sometimes I say, you friends, you go do your German homework, right? You are done with programming. It is not good for you to advance to the next level because I know you have a 4 in German. So it's really better for you as a person to not do more programming, but do something else so you don't fail there, or take a break or go help someone else. There are so many things that are adaptive that I do as a teacher that are not adaptive in the system, but are adaptive outside because I look at the whole student. So these robots, they only look at output. They do not look at, does the kid look happy? Does the student look happy? How are they doing compared to last week? And they have this very, very limited vocabulary. These algorithms will never say, you have done enough programming, take a break, take a walk, go outside. This would be better for you as a person, right? But if I, as a human, look at students through an algorithm, I will also be algorithmified to a certain extent. And I know this sounds super abstract, but I have a very concrete example of the software Magister. So Magister is like Canvas for high schools. Let's call it that. And then in Magister, if I log in every lesson that I teach in high school, after the lesson, I have to click aspects of students. These are the aspects that I'm forced to click after a lesson. Was the student absent? Were they too late? Did they forgot their homework? Did they forgot their book or materials? All of this is negative, right? The only thing that I'm putting in the system is negative. There's no room for compliments. There's nothing like, oh, you really well. I am checking. I'm turning into a police officer robot, right? And then it's really, really hard, even though I am aware of what's happening to me. Still, I am put into the system of thinking, oh yes, Harry forgot his book again. Rather than thinking, oh, he was so nice to his friend that was sick, right? Or he was helping someone, or he was struggling and yes, he forgot his book and he didn't do anything, but I saw he was trying. None of that is there. So this algorithm is creating a version of me that's only looking at part of the student. And this is even not even an algorithm. This is just a spreadsheet that we pay much more for, right? But this already is putting my mind in a way of thinking. So the more algorithms we put in between me and a student, the more I will also start to think as a student. As a robot, the less likely I will be probably to say, I see that you tried, right? Because the system will say, Harry, 0 points again. And it's so hard to then step out of that and think, yes, but I want to look at person Harry. I don't want to look at performing Harry, right? All these things that I also would want to do are not in the system. And these systems also tend to very much reward a certain type of behavior, right? If you do it well, then you get a star or a point. Specifically, these algorithms aimed more at elementary school kids. In high school or in the university, we don't say, oh, you have 5 stars usually. We're like, oh, well done. You have a robot thumbs up. But then students that don't do well, what happens is that the level automatically gets lowered. So it makes the level lower until the fact that the student can also get the robot thumbs up. Yes, yes, we make it easier and easier and easier. And already results now are showing that the students that are most likely to suffer from those algorithms are students that have less prior knowledge. So maybe they don't speak Dutch at home, maybe their parents aren't well educated, so they're less exposed to education in the household. So then their level just gets lower and lower and lower until they can also get the robot's thumbs up. Whereas a human teacher can say also things like, okay, I see you're struggling, but let's leave chapter 1 for now. Yeah, you also go to chapter 2 for various reasons, because you just think it will be more effective for them to not get stuck, but also for motivation reasons, right? Just if you're still on level 1 and everyone is on level 3, kids will see this, right? They are not stupid. They know that this adaptive system is working differently for their friends. So there's so much flexibility that a teacher has to do something with those students that are lagging behind for various reasons. Whereas what we already see happening in these algorithms is students that are lagging behind will remain behind, because the algorithm will never say, we will just skip this, let's go. So hopefully, I hope that the simple fact that teachers are out of date is, even though we still hear today, no, not still true, because there's so many things that teachers are doing that cannot be replaced by algorithms. Grading is not teaching. Looking at essays and giving feedback is not teaching. There's so much more. And the reason why students still go to university, even though they could learn everything they want on YouTube, is because this relationship that they have with teachers and that they have with each other. And that, I think, just cannot be automatized away.